So we come to Thursday in Holy Week, Maundy Thursday, the bitter valley. Jesus has reached his last day. He will not sleep again on earth until he sleeps in death. It is with great longing and yearning that he comes to this supper with his disciples. For some time now he has had an arrangement with a friend in Jerusalem, ready for the time when he could judge it right to eat the Passover with his disciples. There is an urgency that calls him. In the set of the face of Judas, he will have Judas at the supper, but cannot hold him much longer. He sends the disciples ahead so that they could prepare the meal. They have to go to the temple to select a lamb which must be unblemished, perfect according to the law, and killed in the proper way. They have to dress it with herbs and have it ready together with bread and wine for the table. Meanwhile, Jesus has taken leave of his friends in Bethany and has come into the city, quietly and unobserved. He makes his way to his friend's house, and there he finds everything ready in the upper room. They make their way up the stairs, after greeting the man of the house and his family, and into the room. Some of them have probably been there before, but whether they had or not, none of them could really miss the jars of water set there for them by the host, so that they could wash their feet. Perhaps once again they had been arguing about importance and authority. In this new kingdom that Jesus talked about, they had to get the hierarchy organized, and someone had to speak for him when he was away in prayer, as he often was. They needed a PR man. They hadn't been too successful speaking for him on other occasions, but perhaps they had improved a little now. It would be a suitable time at the Passover for him to give out some authority. So their thoughts wandered and intermingled, and between them they quite ignored the common courtesy of bringing water to each other to wash the dust from their feet. Or perhaps they didn't quite forget, but hoped someone else would do it, or felt that one of the younger ones should do it, or just felt tired and weary and pretended to forget. What a jolt all those thoughts must have had when Jesus rose from the table, stripped off his outer garment, tied a towel round his waist, and knelt to wash their feet. Only Peter dared to say anything, burning with shame and indignation, yet still more engrossed in himself than in the meaning of what was happening. Jesus bent to every man of those he had chosen, binding each to him in this very personal act. Judas, too, he washed. Then he told them that this was how he saw authority, as one who serves, not as one who dominates, one who has the welfare of each and every man at heart. If they knew how to be humble, then they would know also how to rule. At the end of the meal, Jesus again took a new role with them. He celebrated the new covenant, which he said was to be in his body given for them and in his blood shed for them. Unless Jesus had done this, we would not have known clearly that the cross was a death he freely accepted. And if there had been no crucifixion, his words would have remained a poetic mystery. On the table lies what Christ calls his body and blood, given for us. Upon the cross, that same body and blood will be broken and poured out. Jesus is already walking in the bitter valley of his priesthood, a priesthood in which all sacrifice from the beginning of time is consummated. The narrowing focus of the vision of God comes to perfection as the messianic covenant is fulfilled in him, Messiah, and Son of God. From the earliest recorded history, there has been in man the desire to worship, a tendency to believe that behind the world, behind its seasons, behind good fortune and bad fortune, lay a power superior to him, a power who not only could be pleased, but also needed to be placated. Wherever there are remnants of man, we find too the signs of sacrifice, the giving of something holy to the gods, while seeking a blessing in return on crops, fertility, travel. Man reached with a restless soul beyond the stars, searching. Searching for what? For a dream? For a figment of his imagination, for a comforter? For a hand to hold in the dark? For a God? Yes. It seems that man has always had a God-shaped vacuum, which he has struggled and struggles to fill. And the differences of many races have brought many different ways of communicating that need and different images of God. In many of these ancient religions, there were miraculous stories, myths of strange births, the mating of the gods with mortals, and the courts of the gods, where some of the blessed might walk. The history of the world is full of men striving after the gods, and of sacrifices and worship designed to honor them. As physical hunger drives a man to seek for food, so the hunger for something greater and wiser than himself drove man to look for a God. In the fullness of time, all the religious striving of mankind came to fruition in Jesus. All the dreams of gods walking the earth were fulfilled in the Son of God, made flesh of Mary's body. All the long and complicated rituals for cleansing were fulfilled by God himself, who as man in perfect obedience offered the one perfect and eternal sacrifice of himself. Here in the night before he suffered, Jesus, true God and true man, gives himself, his body and his blood. The reality of the cross is already present, and he gives himself with his own hand, as on the next day he will give his back to the scourge, his body to the cross, his heart to the spear. Here, as he raises the unleavened bread and breaks it and passes round the cup of the new covenant, all times are made present, and the power of his love streams backwards to the dawn of time and forward to the end of it. Not yet do the disciples know just what he is about. Like children approaching their first communion, they sense something of God in what they eat and drink, but have yet to understand. And yet there is the hand of Judas on the table, and in this very moment of exaltation, the soul of Jesus cries out, already wounded by the betrayal. And Judas goes about his business. Behind him, Jesus gathers his little flock to him and goes out across the brook to the Garden of Gethsemane, where he used often to go to pray, and now to wait. Ahead, within touching distance, the lies, the betrayal, the trial, the scourging, the hammer, the nails, and death. In the words of Father Andrew, SDC, he knelt beneath the olive shade, and the trees bent over him, and though all life by him was made, his soul, in twilight dim, sought for the blessed will of God, until the cross shone clear for him. Then came he forth in strength again, and went to die for sinful men. We are this day a community where the joy and pain of Jesus can be felt, as we bring with us the agonies and the joys of the world. The world loves so much that his life was given for it. What joy is his as he stands in every community that celebrates with him this night. Priestly hands break the bread and pour the wine, so that Christ may be recognized, worshipped, and received by us. What pain is his as he looks on a divided world and a divided church. What pain as he sees how deep-rooted still are the prejudices between one Christian and another, and between the different faiths, and between races and nations. By being here tonight, we proclaim that the healing of the world and of the hearts of men lies here. That in the heart of this man who is God, we are all embraced in love. As the bread and wine are raised for us to see, so we taste in each other's hearts the final homecoming of all mankind. These days that we keep are not just yearly rituals, they are doors through which we may enter into the eternal experience of God in Jesus. Not just to recall, to remember, but to make present, to call into the present being the great acts of our redemption, so that we kneel not in imagination but in truth before the cross. God is the God of the living, and so all time is present to him. The whole of the earthly life of Jesus is forever in God. And when we make Eucharist, the whole of that life is present for us. Tonight we choose to be with Jesus in his last hours, and so we are made present to him there. The night on which he said to his friends, "Watch with me," and they fell asleep for sheer weariness. Tonight, as the earth turns slowly on its path round the sun, the voice of prayer will never cease, nor will the lamps go out. When there is no one left before the sacrament in the garden of repose, that watch is taken up elsewhere, as thousands upon thousands of Christians watch through the hours of Gethsemane. In the dark hours of vigil, in the vibrant silence and the blaze of candles, our communion with the Lord in the bread of the Eucharist is celebrated. In these last hours, we are reminded that he does all this because we are worth it, not because we are worthy, but we are beloved. In the dark hours of another night, this all began when the Word of God leapt down from heaven to be conceived in the womb of Mary. For 9 months he lay a silent presence in her body, and the ground where she walked was blessed by the holy burden she carried. When he made the new covenant, he chose again to be among us, silent and concealed in bread and wine. So let us watch with this silent Lord of ours, whether at home with our Bibles and in prayer, or in church beside the silent presence of the sacrament. Let us watch with Christ the Lord, who goes the way of the cross and tastes agony for us in his bitter valley. To Calvary all roads on earth must come, for man doth ever injure man through sin, until the end of time. Christ's pain is manifest. We must not sleep if we are one with him.